Welcome back to the Early Way In podcast. After a week off, we go to Paris for the first time. Cards loaded with some French fighters here who probably never thought they'd even get a chance to fight on their home soil. There was a ban until 2020 on MMA in France, and now we got France's own Ciryl Gane headlining the card, taking on Tai Tuivasa in what, could be a number one contender fight. Definitely puts him, close to a title shot. And in our co-main event, another highly anticipated potential number one contender fight with Marvin Vettori and Robert Whittaker. Card seen a ton of changes, but we still got 12 fights on record, and I think there's some spots you and I really like to hit throughout this card. Before we get into it and everything, though, week off to kind of digest what we witnessed just last 2 weeks ago in Salt Lake City. Pound for pound, headshot, dead, The welterweight title changes hands, and you and I profit a little bit off of it. Leon and Tibera kind of basically helped our nights out a ton. And, man, before we get everything started, go ahead and go through 278.
Yeah, so we'll take a look at your card first. Your biggest play of the night was Amir Albazi, 5 units at minus 350. That hit, easy 1.5 unit profit right there. You got to take those spots when you can. Looking down, I think the under 2.5 for the Paulo Costa Luke Rockhold has to be the most disappointing spot of the night. Plenty of opportunities for that fight to finish. Awful body language for Luke Rockhold, and it just didn't happen. That's one of those variant swings that you just can't help. And then the Victor Altamirano Daniel De Silva fight under 2.5 rounds minus 175. Great price tag for that fight to finish. You ended up plus 0.54 units on the night. Definitely a good profitable night for how many props you and I both missed. And we'll move on to my card after that. Like you said, the Leon Edwards and Marcin Tibera, that was the saver of both of our nights. I put a unit on both of them and ended up profiting 3 units on both of those guys. It was the props that really got me into some trouble. I also kind of lost on the Luke Rockhold Paulo Costa. I had it under 1.5 rounds. And then thankfully the Aldo versus Merab Davishvili went to the scorecards and it nullified the bet. I thought Aldo was the right side, but that fight sucked. And I guess for what it's worth, I do think that Merab won that fight. I ended up the night minus 1.01 units, and definitely something that I can come back from. Looking forward to getting back at it this week. In our main event, we have 2 heavyweights in Ciryl Gane versus Tai Tuivasa. It's crazy to think that only 3 years ago, Tai Tuivasa was, cut from the UFC roster after suffering 3 losses in a row. And, now he's on this incredible 5-fight finish streak. And through kind of favorable matchups and creating all this hype with his post-fight antics and that fan-friendly style, he's kind of found himself in a position where he is now fighting the upper echelon of the division and in one of the most talented guys in the division in Ciryl Gane. Gane, highly talented striker, does an amazing job at using that length and athleticism to keep the fight at range where he's most comfortable. And, he's kind of adopted the same style as Israel Adesanya has in his past few title defenses, where he just simply has better footwork and better technique and doesn't really rely on that KO power. I think that's going to be very difficult for Tai Tuivasa. I have a hard time finding a path to victory for Tai. I don't think that he's going to be putting on the wrestling shoes like Francis Ngannou was able to last fight. And in a fight that I'm fairly certain is going to take place on the feet, Ciryl is much faster, longer, more technical, and he's kind of made a career off of beating huge dudes with just a puncher's chance. This will be the first 5-round fight that Tuivasa has ever had inside the octagon. He's only been to decision 2 times, seen the 3rd round 2 times in his UFC career, and neither one of them were impressive to me. First one against Andrei Arlovski, where he's got a broke nose at the end of the 3rd round, and then the other one with Blagoy Ivanov, where he's huffing and puffing, just can't keep his hands up. It's not a good look. Similar to Derek Lewis, I do think that Tuivasa lacks the striking skills to cut off the cage, where Gane's going to be circling off. And I think it's only a matter of time before Gane, lands that shot over 25 minutes. I think the level of experience, technique, and patience that Gane has shown through his career, he's going to be setting up these traps for the entire fight with feints, and Tuivasa is going to get sloppy. I do think it's only a matter of time before Gane finds that kill shot.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page here, and it kind of sucks to agree here because we both like Tuivasa. Chewy's in the intro and everything, right. But there's a significant skill gap here. We both have to agree there. You talked about the footwork, his Muay Thai, just fight IQ in general. You don't see the guy putting himself in danger. Does a really good job of sticking on the outside with his jab and his kicks, and he just makes his opponents choose. You're going to close the distance on him and just get outstruck by the more talented, faster heavyweight, or you're going to stay out at range and point fight him in a fight that you're going to lose over 25 minutes. He's a real tricky opponent. You throw in the 5-round experience that he has, much better gas tank, and his fight IQ, man, his coaching. I'm not going to be so shocked if he actually comes out here and mixes in a couple takedowns on Tai Tuivasa. We're talking about a guy who's got, leg lock submissions. Tuivasa has shown time and time again in the Spivak fight and stuff. He's a fish out of water on his back. Derek Lewis was out there landing trip takedowns on him, and he's a very one-dimensional fighter who really has to have the right dance partner to look good and be successful. And when you look at who he's fought lately, I'm not going to say that Gane's, resume is just all the best, but we're talking guys like Rosenstruik, Volkov, things of that nature. Let's look at who, got on Tai Tuivasa's side since his return. It's Stefan Struve, one of the chinniest fighters in the division. Harry Hunsucker, who got cut last week. Greg Hardy, now cut. Augusto Sakai, like an L2 or 3 being knocked out. And then, best win, Derek Lewis. Hunsucker and Derek Lewis were the only ones that were coming off of a win, and neither one of them have actually even aged well since that. Tai Tuivasa, like I said, can land that bomb if he has the right dance partner, but if there's one heavyweight to me that I feel like it's the hardest heavyweight to land that one power punch on, it's going to be Ciryl Gane as the answer every single time. So at minus 530, I don't know if I get there in a parlay, especially at heavyweight. I don't know where there's value with that. And I tried to even look at the 4-5 decision at plus money, but I also don't even know if Tuivasa is going to even get to round 4 or 5. So I think Gane inside the distance sometimes throughout this fight is probably what you and I both think is going to happen. In our co-main event, we have Robert Whittaker taking on Marvin Vettori. A fight I'm sure neither one's going to complain about being 3 rounds, but man, could headline a fight night, easily be a headliner any other time. Both guys in particular here, a pretty tricky spot. They're the number 1, number 2 guys in the division, fighting for a number 1 contender spot, you think, but they've also lost to the champion both twice now, putting them in a pretty tricky spot. And maybe the title does change hands next month, but you got to think Israel is going to get an immediate rematch if that happens, forcing these guys to take another fight in the division. It's just I question where the motivation is for these guys to have to climb that ladder again, to just fight these contenders over and over again. Robert's literally done it multiple times now to get back to the title, and still being only 30 years old, pretty shocking when you look at that, but it almost seems kind of like the guy has got some fight miles and things that are starting to add up on him. You go back and watch his fights with Yoel, they're crazy, but he does hit the deck a couple times. He pulls out of those injuries and surgeries in the fights with Kelvin Gastelum. Then you see him get knocked out by Israel. I think Till called him with the elbow on the inside and knocked him out. You knocked him down as well. It's just what I'm getting at is his durability is not what I see from Marvin Vettori by no means. But in terms of technicality, I think that's going to 100% favor Robert Whittaker here. I think at range he's a much more talented striker, much faster striker. You see him work behind the jab, the good oblique kicks, and he sets up that really nice head kick, off of his jab as well. I've never really seen Robert on his back. His takedown defense has always held up pretty good, and never really just been, like I said, held down, forced. And the game plan of Marvin, I don't think's going to be too big of an issue here for Rob. I think the footwork going to be able to keep him on the outside, and I feel like he's just going to be a step ahead of here of Vettori, but again, you got to go back to the fact that this is the number 1 and the number 2 ranked fighters in the division, and do you really want to lay minus 240 on one of these guys when you think it's actually even going to go the full distance? That's something I'm trying to get better on. So even though the pick's going to be Robert Whittaker, I can't get there on the money line. I think that could play out a little bit closer than minus 245.
Yeah, man, I think we're seeing this fight similar, but I'm attacking it a different way betting wise. Like you said, kind of weird that these guys are the co-main event. Yeah. They clearly have made it that they are the best out of the current champ in the division. But like you said, it's kind of also hard for me to picture a way for either one of these guys to win in a convincing fashion. I look at the advantages Whittaker has in this matchup. Like you said, better footwork, crisper striking, probably an experience edge, especially in high level fights. And likely the better traditional wrestling technique. I look at the better footwork and the clean striking. I don't think that that's going to end a fight necessarily, certainly not against the durability that Marvin Vettori's shown up until this point. And then I look at maybe the wrestling and the experience edge that Whittaker has. I also don't think that that's going to finish the fight. If anything, that's going to drag it out longer. Yeah. The advantages that I have for Whittaker, none of that's finishing the fight. I take a look at Vettori. He has the durability, the pressure. He's stronger, bigger, and younger. Now, not younger by much, but like you kind of talked about, the fight miles is something that's definitely going to catch up to Robert Whittaker sooner or later. But I think about the durability and the youth. That's great for Marvin Vettori's defense, but it's certainly not going to win him a fight. I look at the high pace and the strength advantage he might have over Whittaker, but I've seen Whittaker deal with much stronger, better wrestlers than Vettori in the past for over 25 minutes against Yoel Romero. So I doubt that Vettori's going to break him in just this 3-round fight. I think it's a fair point to assume that this fight's going to see the judges 80% of the time, maybe a minus 400 clip. So now what? You're banking on this judging in France, first time that we've ever been here, to interpret a high-level chess match with cage control, effective striking versus volume striking, and wrestling all being huge components. And who should win this fight? And are you going to bank on them to make this right choice? I think it's a clear dog or pass here, or possibly even Vettori by decision. It just is what it is. You got to take it for what it's worth. Judging is faulty, and I do think that there's not a world where I see Vettori getting flatlined here. I think he's going to make it a close competitive fight. And something else to consider is Vettori, I know, comes in fight night over 210 pounds. I think he's going to have a significant size advantage that we're not seeing on paper, but that we will see in the face-offs. I've seen that Whittaker walks around at 215 pounds, and I might agree on that. I just don't think at fight week that he's walking around much more than 200, 205 maybe. So I do think Vettori's going to have a much bigger size advantage than people are seeing on paper. For my fight of the night, I chose Charles Jourdain versus Nathaniel Wood. For Jourdain, I feel like this is an awfully quick turnaround for a guy who just went 15 minutes with Shane Burgos. To his credit, he avoided most of the damage opponents usually receive after facing Shane Burgos. Wood, he's made this transition to 145 pounds, and after his featherweight debut against Charles Rosa, I think I'm on board with the move, man. He showed excellent cardio and his striking, and it seems that move up could have been the answer to the cardio issues he's had in the past at bantamweight. I think Wood's biggest obstacle going up into this division is definitely going to be his size. At only 5'6", he's likely always going to be giving up a few inches in height or reach to his opponent, and that has to be factored in when breaking down his fights. I've never really questioned Jourdain's heart in any of his fights, but I've often questioned his skill level. He's extremely hittable, and I feel like having a style that relies on your heart to pull out a win just isn't a style meant for long-term success. Jourdain, he's going to have a significant size advantage here, which will help him deal with the inevitable shots to the face he's going to take from Nathaniel Wood. But I do have a feeling both guys will be willing to trade with each other often. In scramble situations where they do link up, I think that Wood is the bigger threat. He's like a backpack with the rear naked choke, and that is his go-to. And after just seeing Jourdain deal with Burgos, having over 5 minutes of back control time in their last fight, I think it is something that you have to consider. On that same token, Nathaniel Wood has also shown the ability to kind of give himself up in situations and allow for submissions to get sunk in, and so that is why I've chosen this fight as my fight of the night, is because I think it's just guaranteed violence and two guys with the gas tanks to make it entertaining for as long as one of them can stand up. So I think that this is a great fight of the night and one that I do see a finish in.
Yeah, for as much violence as I agree that I think is going to be here, doesn't go the distance. Under 2.5, I think, is even plus money or even a really good line. When I go back and watch that fight with Shane Burgos, shame on me for laying minus 200 on Shane Burgos. And I cashed a ticket, but I mean, Jourdain, another set of judges that night. Jourdain, he walks away with a win or at least a draw there. I thought he was going to be the one to break under the size, under the pressure, and it was literally the exact opposite. He comes out with a much better gas tank that I had seen before. The dude was landing incredible shots in the clinch, nasty cage work in round 3. shots that I really do think would get Nathaniel Wood out of here if they're landing on him. And Burgos is a massive, massive featherweight, and when I watched that fight, it really looked like size was one of the issues that he struggled with, and not so much it was a technical issue, more of I thought Burgos just looked a whole lot stronger than he did. And with Wood, you're right, man. Second fight up at featherweight, it looks to be a good move. You see those pictures of him at bantamweight with every vein and stuff sticking out of him. It definitely looked like a tough weight cut. But a minus 600 in one of your most, that's one of the most favorable matchups and generous matchups in the featherweight division right now in Charles Rosa. I don't know how much I personally can take from it. I feel like Jourdain here, the X55er at TKO, even debuting at 55 here in the UFC, I think that size and that pressure is going to be an issue for Wood down the stretch. And the forward pressure, Nathaniel Wood, he's going to want to try to keep his range and use his kicks. I think the forward pressure of Jourdain will try to negate a whole lot of those. And when you put a wrestler on the back foot, you see the shots a whole lot easier as well. I told you earlier, sometimes you just kind of have that gut feeling about how a fight's going to end, and I watched Nathaniel Wood leave his neck out, get caught in Darce choke against Charles Rosa, and I watched how quick, Charles Jourdain was to snatch up the neck of Lando Venata. And to me, I think that's how this fight's going to end. I think we're going to see a Jourdain by submission, cash, your violence bet that you're talking about. But I did get on the Jourdain money line at minus 144. I actually kind of agree with the opener, man. I think he's more around a 67% here. I think he wins it about every 3 times here. And so I thought minus 200 was actually an appropriate opener. So to get minus 144, I'm happy on it, but excellent fight to pick. For my fight of the night, I'm going to go with Nassourdine Imavov taking on Joaquin Buckley. This fight card, the order of it has just changed around so many times, and I think I saw it on the prelims, and the last time I saw a tweet out there, but it's an absolute shame if this is not on the main card. It's going to be an absolute killer fight. Both guys push a great pace and finish a whole lot of their fights, and Buckley almost needs no introduction. That highlight over Impa is just going to be played for years and years to come, and to me, he is just a knockout or bust fighter who is undersized in his weight class. You really saw him try to implement a wrestling game plan against Al Hassan. In round 3, it's him stuck on bottom. It's him gassed and stuff, and granted, the Albert Duraev fight last time, we were big on Albert to win that fight, and Buckley did look good. He looked a whole lot more patient. He was willing to just kind of stay behind his power and not overextend to end up on his back, and he got a doctor stoppage win there. But I feel like if Buckley stays behind his jab and plays that striking game with any of these other middleweights, especially Imavov, he's not going to have the same success here. In this particular matchup, I actually struggle to figure out where Buckley is better. I think Imavov has all the physical, advantages. Technically, size advantage is going to be a big factor here. And you see Buckley get stuck behind these long, rangy fighters a lot, like Kevin Holland, D. Chirico. You saw him struggle with Antonio Arroyo as well. And I just think he gets frustrated at range if he's not able to land his shots, and he starts trying to close distance, real sloppy. He's been knocked out in 3 of his 4 losses. The only loss he's not knocked out in is Logan Storley, who's a D1 wrestler and doesn't finish anybody. And so I really do think he's going to get reckless and knocked out by Imavov. I lost my parlay piece with Imavov, so I've just got him on 1.25 units straight at minus 225, which is a good line. And I thought fight ends by TKO here at only minus 110 was also a line that holds some value. So violence all the way here. I think Imavov's going to get the finish, though.
My fighter to watch is Khalid Taha. He is under 30 years old and technically 1-3-1 in the UFC. Awful look on paper, but I'll be the first to say I think he's had an extremely tough road in the UFC so far. Debut loss to Nad Narimani. I can forgive it. Then he gets that first round KO over Boston Salmon, and that just gives you a little bit of a taste, man. And then he gets that win over Bruno Silva, who also kind of has a bad look on paper, but I know me and you both kind of hold him in high regards. He's under Henry Cejudo. Outside of size, Bruno Silva is a solid fighter, and to get a win over him, I think that says a ton. Now, it did end up getting switched over to a no contest. He tested positive for some PEDs, and I think the UFC punished him for that. I think he came back. They gave him Raoni Barcelos and then Sergey Morozov, both extremely tough fights, and both of which I think would have a field day against Christian Quinones. I think that he's learned his lesson, and the UFC is now giving him the opportunity to show that he belongs in the UFC. Taha, like I said, under 30 years old, extremely young, and has shown amazing toughness throughout his UFC career and glimpses of greatness inside of that. I think it's a perfect buy low spot for someone who has proven that he can get wins at the UFC level and hang in there with even the upper echelon of the of that division. If he fumbles this bag right here in this position, I do think it's a good chance that the UFC cuts him, which is why he's my fighter to watch. I think he's got a lot on the line right here.
Yeah, and he's an excellent fighter to keep your eye on because you talked about the talent that he's been in the cage with, and I see a lot of love for Christian, and it's bringing the line down a lot. And less than a week ago, Christian wasn't flying out to Paris to fight, right. And so, I think Taha very well could be in a spot to make a splash and get back on track here. For me, Abusupian Magomedov, got to talk about Magomedov. It's been almost a 2-year wait for this guy to try to get into the UFC, and he lost his original opponent. We got Dustin Stoltzfus stepping up on short notice to fight him, and I don't like the matchup for Stoltzfus in at all, really. When I look at where this fight could take place, I think every advantage I see lies toward Abus. In terms of striking, Stoltzfus can't hold a torch to this guy, really. It's the Muay Thai counter striking. It's just on a completely different level. You see Abus just throwing nasty body kicks, and he loves to dig to the body, tear you down late. And of course, being a Magomed, the guy grew up in Dagestan, you see him wrestling a little bit as well. And that's how Dustin has any success in his fights, is by wrestling. And when you take that away from him, you take away his main path to victory. And I just don't like it. And let's look at a Magomedov last name who owns a 81% win rate in MMA as well. So if you just want to look at the name alone, there's some straight up value there. I think this is a matchup for him to shine. The only little red flag you have on him that you're kind of worried about is that layoff. But then you look at Stoltzfus really stepping up on short notice as well, and he almost kind of evens things out here. I favor Abus everywhere. I think the UFC put him in a good spot to win.
For my underdog of the night, I'm taking Marvin Vettori. Kind of laid out when I first broke down the fight how I see it's going to win. I just see this fight going to the judges. I think Marvin Vettori, he's going to make the fight close, and you're getting almost 2-1 underdog odds on him. I just think it's a no-brainer in a fight that's going to be competitive. It's the number 1 and number 2 guy in the division. They're both young, but I do think at some point Vettori will surpass Robert Whittaker in their MMA career. It's just a matter of when that's going to happen, and I do think it's just going to be by a hair anytime that they change who's better at the time. So value-wise, I do think that my underdog of the week, Marvin Vettori, is a good pick.
Money line wise, man, I'll be honest with you. I can't hate it. I talked about it, Leon and Kamaru Usman, whether it's 50 seconds left in the fight or not, you've got two very, very high-level fighters, Peter Yan, Aljamain Sterling, two very, very high-level fighters, two of the best in the division. One never really should be a minus 250 favorite, My underdog, another guy that I don't know if I technically get to the window on, but I see a ton of value on, is Firas Ziem this week at plus 152. A guy we just can't ever get on the right side of, We tried to fade him twice with Luigi and Malarkey, despite maybe thinking we should have won and got a draw. We lost both of them, and then that gave us enough to stay off of Terrence McKinney at almost pick'ems, and he goes out there and finishes him in round 1. It's just, Ziem's been a tricky guy for us, but again, it's a hard sell for me to not think there's some value on him this week. UFC, I think they technically did let him go. Maybe it was just some contract disputes, but they brought him back and they put him in his home country of France. They're giving him a winnable fight here, taking on Michael Figlak. He's an undefeated newcomer from Cage Warriors. You look at him, the guy looks to be a decent striker, a decent wrestler. He's gone the distance multiple times, so you don't question the cardio. But I do question the experience. He's not fighting in the UFC. He doesn't have 4 UFC fights here. I think Firas Ziem is just growing as a fighter here, and he's clearly the better kickboxer at range. He's a guy that you almost have to wrestle, because if you're going to strike with him, he's hard to hit. He makes it too close. He weasels his way out of them into decision wins. So, a debutant in Figlak minus 200. I don't see potential to cover that price tag there. So Ziem at plus 152, potential live underdog come Saturday.
All right, so for my prop of the night, I will be taking Gane inside the distance. It's heavyweights.
Yeah.
I think that Tai Tuivasa is very hittable. He doesn't do a great job of disguising his entries, and this is a fight where he has to get on the inside of Gane's range to be effective. Yep. I think that over the course of 25 minutes, Gane is going to pick up the reads, get the timing, and land a flush counter strike that knocks out Tuivasa or wobbles him, and then I think it'll be Gane's decision on how he wants to finish the fight. But I do think that opportunity will present itself multiple times over 25 minutes. So Gane inside the distance minus 150 is my prop to watch.
I've already got Gane by submission at plus 420 tracked. Probably going to be telling you on inside the distance as well at minus 150. That's a 60% clip, and I think that's more like 70. I think you're getting a 10% edge on that, man. You got 25 minutes to finish a guy that I don't even think can go 25 minutes. So good bet, man. I'm going to go Whittaker by decision for my prop. Not as juicy as your Marvin Vettori, but it is taking your minus 250 that I think is going to win, and I did get plus 100 on it. The guy's not had a finish since 2017, and Marvin Vettori has never been finished and never even been knocked down once. So I don't think the finish is coming for Robert Whittaker here. If there is a finish, I think it's the durability of Whittaker finally catching up to himself. You also look at fight doesn't go the distance, which is minus 220. So I think that's also a much smarter play, Whittaker by decision at plus 100, than to go to that money line at minus 250. To me, he's shown that he's, this will be a new matchup for him, but he's shown me that he can beat the Tills, the Gastelums, the Cannoniers. Like, he's proven to me outside of Izzy, he's potentially the second best middleweight on the planet. I think he's just a little bit too quick, a little bit too technical for Marvin. He's shown elite takedown defense, and again, you talked about the tricky judging and things in France. I don't know which one they're going to score more, and that's why I opposed to just a one-unit shot here on this decision prop versus laying heavy on the money line.
My best bet of the night is actually one that I am sitting on as the line continues to go into my favor. It's Khalid Taha money line. I think that this is a perfect buy low spot. Taha's had a really rough go in his UFC career, and I don't think that the paper's really showing the full story. I think he's somebody with excellent potential, still under 30 years old, and this guy that he's facing, Christian Quinones, I don't think that he's somebody that the UFC is necessarily bringing over to this France card to set up for a huge debut. I do think that this is them gifting Khalid Taha a winnable fight, and the fact that he's lost his last two make it really easy for the public to bet against him. Right. So right now, sitting on that, waiting for Taha to get much better, but I think that there's so much value, even at his current price tag, minus 111 on Bet Online right now. So that's a spot that I'm definitely going to be playing as one of the bigger plays on my card.
Nice, man. I dig it. I think I picked a buy low spot for one of my fighters as well. Picking Nasrat Haqparast. I got him at minus 188, which on the same book is like minus 230 right now. So it's nice to have some closing line value on your best bet, 2.5 units on him. And I cap him at minus 230 here. I think he's about 70% in this fight. Like I said, I think it's a perfect buy low spot here at minus 188 for a guy who's lost 2 fights in a row. He got out-volumed by Bobby Green. I mean, so be it, man. Bobby Green's going to do that to almost everybody outside the top 15. You see him going toe-to-toe with Fiziev still in the round 3, throwing volume like crazy. And then you get out-wrestled by Dan Hooker in a fight where both of these guys were extremely ill-prepared. You saw Dan Hooker fly in over on like a week notice and still make weight. Nasrat loses his mom on fight week and still decides to fight. It was not it was definitely not the like best Nasrat Haqparast in the cage that night here. When I look at McDessie, dude, it's the exact opposite of Bobby Green. He throws no volume. His exact opposite approach of Dan Hooker in that fight. He's not landed any takedowns in his entire 19 UFC fight career. And 19 fights in the UFC, a decade there, it is impressive, but not a single guy he's ever beaten still holds a roster spot whatsoever. Nasrat's going to be a decade younger here. I think that's another angle to attack that's also profitable long term. I think he's going to be the faster of the two. Ton of physical advantages on the with the forward pressure. McDessie coming back, being inactive for I think a year and a half now. He tore his hamstring completely off the bone, required surgery for that, and Nasrat has typically been a decision fighter lately with only one finish in the UFC, and McDessie, historically, he has been he's been a pretty durable guy. So I hate to say that I could sweat my best bet to a decision, but I think Nasrat has potential to take this one on a very high clip.
Moving on to our quick picks section of the podcast, we start off in the women's featherweight division with Aylin Perez taking on Stephanie Egger. Short turnaround for Egger.
Yeah.
I don't like the price tag, but I do think that she's going to win here.
Yeah, Perez had the grappling advantage over Zaire Farron. She was a big favorite. Now she completely got that negated. I think I'm on the Stephanie Egger side, but you'll never catch me laying that kind of price tag. Khalid Taha versus Christian Quinones. I haven't put my due diligence into this fight like I think you have, but I'll go with you, man. Taha to upset the newcomer.
Yeah, Taha's my best bet. I'm thinking he gets this done. Our first Frenchman on the card, Benoit Saint-Denis taking on Gabriel Miranda. I don't think that it's a coincidence that Benoit Saint-Denis is on this card. I think they're kind of setting him up for a win here, and I'm definitely going to be going with Benoit here.
Yeah, I think this is actually a good spot for violence. I think this fight finishes inside the distance at a good clip, and I was showing you Miranda on Tapology. Has some fraudulent looking records. Yeah, I think Denis gets him out of there. Nassourdine Imavov versus Buckley. They have this down at the fourth fight. Surely it doesn't stay there. This needs to be a main card. I think Nassourdine Imavov. I think he gets Joaquin Buckley out of there by TKO.
Yeah, I'm gonna also go with Nassourdine Imavov. I think he has more paths to victory. I'd like to see him grapple. Moving on to the lightweight division, Faraz Ziem versus Mikhail Figlak. Man, like you said, we can't get on the right side of Faraz Ziem. I'm laying off this fight completely. I'm going to go with the newcomer, Mikhail Figlak, from Cage Warriors from Poland, 8-0. I think that this could be kind of a spot where the UFC is showcasing a new prospect.
Or it could be the fact that they're giving Faraz Ziem a chance in his hometown to get back on track. I think it's a fight that you completely should stay away from as well. Faraz seems to always weasel out something to plus 150. I'll take a dog or pass situation there. Dustin Stoltzfus at 185 pounds taking on Abus Magomedov. I honestly don't like the matchup for Stoltzfus at all. I think his grappling is negated, and I think he's superbly outclassed on the feet. Abus for the TKO.
I've been telling you it's a weird feeling. I just feel like it's a pretty good price tag for Magomedov. A lot of people are going to be putting him in their parlays. I do think that he's the better fighter here, and he should get the win. So I'm going to go with Magomedov, but I'm personally kind of steering clear from that fight just as a debutant. Moving on to the featherweight division, Charles Air Jourdain versus Nathaniel Wood. I think that this is going to be violence. I think that Jourdain, being the bigger guy, he's going to wind up coming out on top more likely than not.
I'm with you, man. I like Jourdain to win here. His fight's kicking off the main card for a reason. It's going to be a good one. Mm-hmm. William Gomez taking on Gerardo Arenz. A fight that I haven't even looked at, to be honest with you. I see one guy, a massive favorite, both debutants, but it is moved up to the main card as well, so I think they're trying to put their Frenchman into shine. I think I think William Gomez wins inside the distance.
I got the same line of thought. Not enough due diligence on this fight to give a legit pick, but William Gomez seems to be the one that they're trying to showcase here. I'll pick him to win. Moving on to the lightweight division, Nasrat Haqparast taking on John McDessie. I think Haqparast could win this very easily, especially if he can find his way onto the mat. If he stands to strike with McDessie, though, McDessie is a veteran who's made his career off of striking. I'm going to go with Haqparast here.
Yeah, I'm with you. Haqparast, he's my best bet. 2.5 units on him. Moving on up, Alessio Di Chirico versus Roman Kopylov. Man, when I see Di Chirico as a favorite, it's an instant no play for me, and I don't even know why he's this fire up on the main card. But as an Italian, fighting over there close to France, I think I'm going to pick him. I think I'm going to pick him to win by decision.
Yeah, this one has disappointment written all over it, man. I'll go with you. I think Di Chirico is kind of being set up here, so I'll pick him to win. Moving on to the co-main event, Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori. This is my first true underdog I'm taking. Marvin Vettori, I think, is going to get it done.
So I am going to be on the other side with you and take Robert. Almost said the Weeper, you used to call him. Take Robert Whittaker to win here, man. And then in the main event, Ciryl Gane taking on Tai Tuivasa. Again, I think there's significant skill gap, and I like the hometown Frenchman inside the distance.
Yeah, we see that fight the same way. I think Ciryl Gane's got Tuivasa covered in just about everywhere.
Yeah. The card's taking some hits, but still with 12 fights here. Weigh-ins on Friday. Fights, I think, actually prelims start at noon Eastern time for us. So I love some early fights on Saturday. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. See you next week.
Peace.